How's it going, everyone? My name is Talon. It's Christmas time, so I'm kind of trying to dress the part, trying to bring you guys some happy, jolly news. And some of this news is kind of groundbreaking that honestly, I still can't believe it myself. And that is that a telecommunications company is actually keeping their promises. I know it sounds absolutely crazy. I don't think that's ever been done before, but here we are. I've already made some videos on the T-Mobile home internet service. If you haven't seen those, go ahead. I'll leave some links. Go ahead and check those out. But I was reading some article just about a week ago, and I was kind of blown away from what I was reading. And all this article was basically saying was that T-Mobile's keeping their promises when they say that they have absolutely no data caps, no limits for their home internet service. And when they mean they have no data caps, they truly mean that they have no data caps. And one user really took it to the extreme to test this out. They use 95 terabytes of data in a single month. That is absolutely outrageous to me. 95 terabytes, that's a lot of data. Honestly, I don't know what they could have done to even reach that point. But they did say that the entire time they consistently got around 700 megabits per second down. So to put this into perspective, I just switched off of Cox, and Cox has a data cap built into pretty much all of their plans of 1.25 terabytes. So this one T-Mobile internet user is basically using 90 times as much data as the data caps that Cox puts on their users every single month. And Cox isn't the only one that does this. Multiple other ISPs does this, such as HughesNet, Xfinity, slash Comcast, depending on your region, they have different names. And of course, Cox themselves. So plenty of ISPs out there have implemented data caps, and it's all pretty recent change that ISPs started implementing these data caps for home internet users. Of course, people had data caps on their cell phone plans all the time, but that's because the infrastructure was really new. There wasn't a whole lot of bandwidth to go around, and it just kind of made sense. And the infrastructure for normal home internet's basically been there for decades at this point, and it hasn't really been updated unless you got fiber optic to your house. So it's a really weird concept that they started deciding to implement data caps, and it all depends on the region, depends on if they have competition in the area and stuff like that too. Because let's be honest, if you went years without any data caps on your service, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, you can't go over this limit, and if you do, you have to pay a bunch of extra money. For Cox, for example, it was an extra $10 for every 50 gigabytes that you use. That's a big chunk of change right there. And yeah, you can go for unlimited if you want, but that's a $50 charge alone just for unlimited data. That's not including your actual internet plan. Put that in perspective, T-Mobile home internet, $50 flat. It's absolutely insane to think that you can get an entire internet service for the same price that Cox was charging just for their unlimited data plans. And like I said, this is all pretty new for home internet users. I pretty much only started seeing them after 2018, when net neutrality was no longer a thing, at least nationwide. Some states such as California does have their own net neutrality rules in place, but a lot of ISPs don't actually follow it, such as AT&T. They do not care. They basically even stated that the internet doesn't see state lines, so they gave California the middle finger. But in 2018, federally, we don't have any net neutrality rules in place. And net neutrality, it didn't strictly say anything about data caps, but it basically didn't approve of them. It was definitely looked down upon if you read through the rules for net neutrality, because essentially net neutrality means that that the ISP can't segregate between different internet services out there. So that honestly does include high bandwidth services, such as, let's look at video games, for example. You want to download a new game, you're looking at over 100 gigabytes just for a single game. Some games even over 200 gigabytes, depending on if you get the campaign, the multiplayer, and everything else that it includes. So with data caps, ISPs are kind of segregating gamers, because basically if you want to re-download an entire game, you might not be able to without reaching that data cap. You're going to reach that data cap really quickly, such as the 1.25 terabytes that Cox had. You're going to reach that real fast if you download multiple large games. So that's why I believe that honestly data caps have kind of been on a rise for the last couple of years. And again, it seems like it's only in regions that don't have a whole lot of competition. I know here there's not a whole lot of competition. If you didn't like what Cox was doing, guess what? You didn't really have any other options for the longest time. So they basically just milked additional money out of people, or they basically forced your hand into just using less bandwidth. I know for me, some months, if one of my video games weren't working and I had my troubleshooting process was to just reinstall the entire thing, I might have to wait till next month, or I waited till the end of the month to see if I had additional data that I could actually use just to re-download this game. And all that does years down the road is basically ruins the customer's trust in the company. Like, now I have absolutely no loyalty towards Cox. I use them for years out of necessity because I had no other options out there. But because they changed their rules on data caps and I was just so annoyed with it, I didn't want to have that hanging over my head all the time thinking about how much data I'm using. I had to change the way that I use the internet. You can't do stuff like torrenting really that much because it uses a bunch of data. So I wasn't able to do stuff like that anymore. I wasn't able to share files with any friends. I wasn't able to do any server hosting, and I wasn't able to do stuff like YouTube because guess what? YouTube videos, they take a lot of data just to upload them. And when you have a 1.25 terabyte data cap, you can reach that real fast, especially if you have other hobbies such as gaming. And all that means is when a competitor came into town, I jumped right into it right away because, again, I have no loyalty because Cox threw the data caps at their customers just randomly. No one really saw it coming. It wasn't very justified. Because they also raised prices around the same time. So it's just like, why are you guys doing this? It doesn't make any sense. If they lowered prices for like the average consumer, that would make sense. Like that data caps would make sense if the reason why they were there is to limit those high consumption users. That way, low consumption users weren't basically paying for the service for everyone. It would make sense. Data caps would make sense if they lowered the general price of the service, and then they included the data plans such as unlimited data for the people that really needed the high consumption. But it should have equated of about the same, if not just a little bit more for those high consumption users. But that's just not the case. Basically, for the high consumption users, their internet plans just doubled overnight, or I guess over a month. They gave a little bit of grace period, but it wasn't a whole lot. Again, I just thought that this was kind of a cool news. I am surprised that T-Mobile really kept their end of the deal. Telecommunication companies really, they don't have the best track record when it comes to consumer reviews and loyalty, because most of the time they kind of just do whatever they want with consumers, because most of the time consumers don't have any other options. So it's really good to see that T-Mobile is actually keeping their promises. When they say that they have no data caps, they say that they have no data caps. And it's crazy to see that they didn't even throttle any of the data. Even though a user used 95 terabytes of data, their speeds were still absolutely amazing. Again, I've talked about T-Mobile Home Internet a couple times. I'll leave some links for those videos if anyone's curious about them. So check the description for any links down there. And with all that said, happy holidays. I'll probably post a couple more videos before Christmas and everything like that. So with all that said, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.